To give our audience some statistics about the Workers' Party of Belgium, in 2003, it was a party that was fading into obscurity. And as stated on your official website, it faced a stark choice: renew or disappear. Now, you've been credited by both enemies and friends as the architect of the transformation to go from a disappearing party to really, right now, the party has grown from just 800 members in 2003, 21,000 votes, and 5 elected representatives to becoming the 5th largest party in Belgium with over 30,000 members, an estimated 700,000 votes, and 258 elected officials. And this is all during the time when the left is widely seen, just like me, slightly demoralized across the global north. And here in the UK, as I'm sure you have heard, we have witnessed what looks like an implosion of another leftist opportunity, the maybe premature to announce, but the perceived demise of your party. So I think we all want to know how you did it. An easy question.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for the question. It's important. I really do think there is opportunity for this kind of politics everywhere in Europe, and the opportunity is there. When if you see, like for example, the situation in the United Kingdom, there is 850,000 people signing up when they heard about this initiative to create a new real socialist party. So it's huge. I was in Manchester at the Festival of the World Transformed. I spoke with a lot of young people, enthusiastic people, the same people being able, I think, in another context to create things like Manifesta in the UK. So there is an opportunity. So that's, I don't think, the problem. It has to be grasped, and it's not easy to grasp it. So we had our own zigzagging toward our goal. And there were three things, three pillars are very important for us, and we stated them very clearly from the beginning. And the first pillar is to be a principled party, and it may seem obvious, it may seem logic, but it's not, because we knew when other parties tried to correct their course to be less sectarian and less dogmatic, because let's be honest, we were really sectarian and dogmatic, like there are still a lot of groups, and it's to be social democrats. And so we said, okay, no, we want to correct our course, but we want to stay a Marxist party. We want to stay an anti-capitalist party, an anti-imperialist party, and a party for socialism. So our backbone, our identity as a party has to stay Marxist, and our horizon has to stay socialist. So that's the main thing. And it may seem obvious and logic, but it was a debate. What is the identity, the DNA of the party? So a socialist party for socialism. Secondly, to be flexible. That was an all other debate. We said, okay, we have a backbone. That's the main thing, but it is not enough. Before, there was a tendency in our party, and I think it still exists in some left-wing groups, that, okay, you have the truth, and one day people will understand that what you have been saying all this time is right. But it doesn't work like that. It is not enough to be right. You have also have to gain the acceptance of the people, the power of the people. And for that, you have to be tactical. There is tactics as a part of Marxism. Tactics is an art at itself. It's not some side dish somewhere. And so we said, okay, there's a lot of discussion going on the left, on the political side, and it is necessary. It is the basic, it's the backbone, but there is very, very little discussion on tactics, on organizational forms, on when do you need to advance, when do you need to retreat, which alliances do you need to make in which situations, etc. So tactics is very important, and it is very underestimated in the left. Like if you see the far right and the right, they are not only busy with their right-wing racist nationalist culture, but also with via which websites, via which cultural war we want to make new wars against woke or whatever, even this kind of war against woke, it is reflected by the right wing. And so we have to be smart also. So having tactics is the second pillar. It was very important for us. And tactics is always in the service of the horizon. Tactics is also at the service towards socialism. And then the third, and I will end with that, the third pillar is our character, class character as a party is a working class character. And also that may be seen very obviously, but in all Europe, there is a discussion, and there was some theoretical discussion, people say, okay, but working class and class contradictions is not from the 21st century, and now it's the people versus the elite. And so the classical new populist theoreticals, and we said, no, we are still in a class society where the economics are the fundamentals, and where the working class is really creating wealth. And so our identity as a party is a class identity. And with these three pillars, principal party, tactics as an art, as a form, as a part of Marxism, discussion on tactics, and our class character, that was the main part. And for us, it's not enough. It's a story of 20 years, but these three principles are the main principles.
I mean, I like that you laid out the principles so clearly this way, but I do have a question because the thing is, this is the thing about the second pillar that you mentioned. When you don't have a very clear backbone, your first pillar, the second pillar, it just can be completely co-opted by neoliberal messaging, use buzzwords. People like to use buzzwords like people power. They like to use all sorts of buzzwords and democracy as well. But to actually have a tangible way to prove that your tactics are just tactics, you know what I mean? That's a total different thing. It's not that you're being co-opted, because there's many different crossroads. And I would say one of the crossroads, I think, very clearly was the Ukraine. Not to derail this conversation, we want to talk about these things later on in the interview, but I'm just curious about the messaging and how do you combat something like that? Because something like Ukraine, we know across the entire sort of mainstream media, there was one narrative that was acceptable. I think that's a very contentious topic, but there's going to be lots and lots of examples like that, where being a Marxist, socialist, working class party, you're sort of pushing against the mainstream narrative. But for tactics wise, for reach, you're going to have to adjust those things. So how do you make clear what the backbone of your party is in the world that we live in, where there's so much confusion and so much propaganda about these concepts? How did you guys do it?
It's an interesting question, Jana. And no, first of all, I do agree with you. Tactics is not the same as using buzzwords as a checklist, like saying people's democracy, workers' power, etc. I don't like this kind of discourse of narrative, because I do think when you say something, you have to mean it. And when you say something, there is a meaning behind the words. And let me first give a small example, like the word working class was disappeared from the Belgian discussion. And with the book that you have shown, the working class, yes, they have forgotten us, and then the working class care and the looming crisis. This word, the working class, it was for the first time that in 2020 we reintroduced and we discussed it. And we said, okay, because you had all the identity politics, and we said, okay, no. Midst all this identity politics, and we want to promote again the unifying sociological term working class as a class identity of a big portion of the population. And so we advanced them, and now in Belgium, now 5 years later, I think everyone is taking over this term working class. And so that's a Gramscian cultural war you are waging against the right, but you have to do it consciously. It's not like if you want that the mainstream media, people's power, no one except for us is speaking about people's power. If you want to impose this thing, then you have to wage a war, a cultural war. Like, for example, next year we will start with the word anti-imperialism. No one is using it, but we will have 3-4 years to impose the term anti-imperialism on the debate. It's not 10 terms, not 15. And we have a discussion on these things, and we will succeed on that. to impose again anti-imperialism, not on the marginal left wing, but on the whole political debate in the big media, etc. We will succeed in that. And then you have the difficult themes. You're right. And then it has to be seen, when do you attack and when you're in defensive position. So, like, for example, we did a survey. We do it ourselves also. And like, our position on NATO is not popular at all. It's not popular. So we know that our position, that we are against NATO, is not popular. It's the least popular thing the PTB says in Belgium. What's the conclusion? So some right-wing people, right opportunistic wing people in the party says, okay, we have to leave it. And we say, no, we are not going to change our backbone, our principle. But we adapt the language in which we speak on NATO. So we are very patient, very educational on NATO. We don't take for granted that people are against NATO in Belgium. In Belgium, there is also the headquarters of the NATO. And so we have an explication, and we have a special brochure, special podcasts on what the history of the NATO. Very, very low-key, very, very educational. And so that's why we take the conscience of the people where it is. We don't change our position on NATO, but we change the way we take time. And that's tactical. You don't intervene with a tactical question on your position, but on the way to reach your position. And then to end, you can decide on some teams, you can be the icebreaker, but not on all the teams. Like, for example, Palestine in Belgium, the week after the 7th of October, when everyone went hysterically crazy because of the Mossad propaganda, then we said, okay, on this team, we're going to be the icebreaker. And 4 days later, I was on national television, and I said on the 11th of October in Belgium on national television, Netanyahu has to be before the International Court of Justice. It was unpopular totally at that time. But we knew, okay, on this subject, we're going to be an icebreaker, meaning the frozen cultural position of the ruling class, we are going to be the boat that breaks that ice. And so you can decide on some subject to be the icebreaker on Palestine. And afterwards, it paid off, because everyone afterwards do recognize that we were the first party to be really, since ever, supporting in Palestine. But you can't be the icebreaker on every topic. So you have to choose the topics in which you are the icebreaker, and maybe from some other topics there can be academics that's, like, for example, when the US will invade Venezuela, we will of course condemn the invasion of the VS, but maybe there will be academics being the first ones condemning the US invasion, and then we are saying, like this academics are saying, etc. That's tactics. It doesn't change a thing about condemning the US imperialism and difficult topics, but maybe in one example, we do it ourselves. In another example, there are other groups doing it, and I hope it makes sense.
No, I love this. And I'm very thrilled that you will be combating anti-imperialism because, yes, I've been using this term ever since the beginning of our podcast, and certainly most people don't understand what it is. So I'm very pleased that that will be happening. But also, I think, just before we go into the next question, I do just want to clarify this part, because again, it is something very tricky, which is like, I think I've heard you talk about this, the idea of leadership being, you are a Workers Party of Belgium. So you have, I think, a strong socialist Marxist base, but part of it is also people in the party have a voice. So there's a democratic aspect to it. But as we know, and I think you kind of suggested it, but I just want to understand how you do the temperature check on this. Like, to go back to my example, why I'm asking this question is one of the things with your party, not to single out your party again, but it's something that happens a lot where it's like, we believe in people's power, believe in democracy, everyone has a voice. But because we know that most people's understanding about things can be quite limited with the propaganda that they're faced with. How do you balance that? There's education, but you want to hear their voice. What is the process like for your party? I mean, your party, not your party.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. Yeah, that's an important question you're asking, because there is a difference between the debate inside the party and the communication towards the media in the whole world. So firstly, let me say that all the debates in the party are behind closed doors. It's a very important principle. We discussed it a lot with, for example, the people of Le Monde Diplomatique, a theoretical magazine in France. And they said, okay, like in France, everyone on the left is waging their discussion inside the media. But that is falsifying immediately the whole debate. And like if we next year we will have a congress with our party, and there will be a lot of discussion on this tilting world and the shift in the world order. There will be, for example, discussions on the role of China and the investments of China in Africa, etc. And there will be position A, B, C. And so this discussion, we don't wage it on the internet and neither in podcasts, I'm sorry, neither in the media, because we want to know, we want everyone having the right to express their point of view on an honest, but also on a materialistic point of view inside the party. And then maybe some people argue for A, other people argue for position B, and we ask for arguments and maybe we reflect. And that's the way we argue in the party, but also from a Marxist point of view. Because our point of view in the party is towards a liberation of the working class, is towards socialism. So it's not a neutral discussion, it's a materialistic and very sober discussion on the facts, but with the end to liberate and with the end to judge the liberating role or not from China in this world order. That will be the debate. It will be not an academic neutral debate, of course. It will be a debate from a socialist point of view. And that's why this discussion have to be in a democratic environment, and a democratic environment means that people have the right to express themselves on the way they are. Maybe some people are more capable to argue than other people, or some people are more timid than other people, etc. And so you give them a space, a democratic space within a socialist perspective, and not being manipulated by the media. Because if we involve the media in this kind of debate, there's the media. That's not the persons anymore waging this debate, but the media. So that's a very simple thing, but a very important thing. And of course, we are criticized and saying, wow, that's not democratic in a debate. That's not on the media. But that's a crazy, crazy thing to say. We were not going to allow that. And it's more democratic to let the media out than it is less democratic. It's a very important thing for us. And that's... in all our campaigns inside the party, we have base groups. We have more than 400 to 500 base groups, sections everywhere in the factories and in the people's quarters. And on any campaign we are arranging, we are weekly trying to have information about our two main campaigns are now Palestine on the one hand, and the next general strike end of November against austerity. And like on the Palestine question, for example, this Trump plan, to give an example. So we ask our 500 base groups, what are people thinking about this Trump plan? Because we know we have our analysis and we are saying, okay, it is not a peace project. Of course, it's a colonial project, but that's our point of view. But at the base, in the factory or in the people's car, what are people, are they really believing Trump? Yes or no? It's not what we believe, and so we ask information from the base groups, and that's how we try to function. Sometimes it really works very, very well, sometimes not, but that's very important for that we are not starting with our own point of view. Yes, politically, yes, but not on what people are thinking. We're always trying to involve people, and that's a dialectical process inside the party, bottom up, but also top down. Not only bottom up, not only on an anarchistic point of view, and neither only top down, but it's really dialectical, and that's the way we try to work. We really defend this principle of democratic centralism with both aspects, democratic and centralism. It's not centralism and it's not a democratism neither. It is democratic centralism, bottom up, top down, inside the party and outside the media.
Really interesting. Thank you for that answer, because that really does clarify it, especially the media inside the party, the robust democratic nature of the inside with structure, but don't invite the media in until
don't fight in the media. I
absolutely.
spoke, okay, that's up to the situation in the UK, but I spoke and with Jeremy and with Sarah, and whatever their opinions are on organizational matters or communicational matters or financial matters, it's not of mine business, but do discuss this kind, and are important things, but do discuss them behind closed doors and not on Twitter, please.
Right.